Hey everyone, what is going on? It is Crypto Bobby. Hope you are having a great day, great night, wherever you're watching or listening in from. If you've looked at Blockfolio, if you've looked at Delta in the past 24 hours or so, maybe not feeling so hot, but let's take a step back. Let's talk about a couple different things that are happening right now in the crypto market, specifically some really good research from Chainanalysis that you're definitely going to want to check out, essentially indicating that large investors and players in December up until April really cashed out pretty large amounts of Bitcoin. So we'll talk a little bit about that, what that might mean in the long run. Also want to jump into just the overall market sentiment right now, and then a Ripple lawsuit, or another Ripple class action lawsuit. And while I'm not the biggest Ripple fan, I'll talk a little bit about why I think that it is kind of bogus in general. So if you are watching this right now on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button, hit that like button, helps to get this video out to as many people as possible, and I really do appreciate that. Hopping into nomics.com, shout out to Clay Collins and his team who put together Nomics. One of the reasons that I've liked Nomics recently is just because I can go on and actually see what the market cap is doing in the past 24 hours. So right now, the market cap as a whole is down about $21 billion across the board, and pretty much any way you look at it, any way you slice it right now, any way you look at it, any way you slice it, we're down across the board. I'll pop back over here to On-Chain FX to take a look at the past 24 hours. And Bitcoin down about 5%, did not really hold through the lines of support that a lot of people are looking at. Ethereum down, Ripple down. Basically, every single cryptocurrency on the list for On-Chain FX, which is now about 100 assets, 104 assets actually. Every single cryptocurrency is down minus game credits and Byteball. So they are the only ones up right now, and I believe Game Credits had a partnership announcement with FanDuel, which is pretty big news for the most part. I don't have any Game Credits, but if you're in on that, but that positive news is the reason that Game Credits is barely staying afloat right now, but everything else is pretty much down across the board, which sucks to see, but it is what it is. There's really nothing overall driving this. I mean, as far as specific news, really nothing, at least in my mind. No news headline, no regulatory information, just kind of natural market movements at this point in time that's driving a lot of this forward. So one thing that we'll pop over and look at this, because it's definitely something that you want to take a look at, and we'll dive through it. But this was a tweet from Arthur Hayes. If you're not following him, he is the CEO and founder of BitMEX, which is the probably the most popular trading platform for margin trading with Bitcoin, as well as a number of other cryptocurrencies. You can margin trade EOS, Ethereum, Ripple, whatever. There's probably about 10 plus assets that you can do margin trading on, and Arthur is a badass, probably the most jack dude on jack dude in crypto. But so he tweeted, or BitMEX specifically, they have a research arm that is really good. I would highly recommend you follow them. Specifically, they have a research arm, and they tweeted this, and this is actually kind of how I found this information from Chainanalysis. But Roger Ver was tweeting recently, shocker, that if you think that cryptocurrency should actually be used as currencies, then join us at a Bitcoin Cash meetup. And BitMEX research actually pointed to this report from Chainanalysis recently that said 10 times the amount of Bitcoin Cash coins are actually held for investment rather than transactions, whereas Bitcoin right now, the ratio is actually 1-to-1. So we'll dive over here, and I'll post a link to this research here. But this is really, there's a couple interesting things, not only the Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash data points, but also just in general, some of the big kind of the big headline, really, that $30 billion of Bitcoin essentially was sold off during the crazy speculative bubble, essentially, of November, December, January. So if you're not familiar with Chainanalysis is a company that analyzes the Bitcoin blockchain. They have software that essentially analyzes the Bitcoin blockchain for identity, for fraud purposes, for just research in general. They have contracts with the U.S. government, I believe. I forget these specific arms, but Chainanalysis does have contracts with the U.S. government. as well. So Chainanalysis has this software that can analyze the Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash blockchains to determine what specific Bitcoin is used for, who owns Bitcoin. As you know, Bitcoin is kind of pseudonymous. It is not truly anonymous, and everything can be tracked. And Chainanalysis is probably the most prominent company out there that can track the Bitcoin blockchain. And what they determined was during from December of 2017 to April of 2018, long-term investors, people that had held Bitcoin for a long time, long-term investors offloaded about $30 billion of Bitcoin to new speculators in the industry. So people that joined the crypto investment game in December and January of this year were essentially buying long-term investor, like what some might consider whales, whatever you want to call it, Bitcoin OGs, essentially, Bitcoin original gangsters. Basically, Bitcoin OGs sold $30 billion of Bitcoin to new investors, offloaded that, you would assume, at pretty premium valuations if we're talking about December here. And that is something that the Chainanalysis research points to, and I think it is pretty interesting. Number one, the fact that the amount of money that was offloaded during this point in time, I think perhaps you had these long-term investors seeing an incredible opportunity to generate wealth and have very strong liquid assets. And also you could see the speculative nature of Bitcoin and these new investors coming in. So that's one thing I think is really interesting. And then going to that too, so we'll pop down here as well. But the percentage of Bitcoins available and the Bitcoin money supply. So this is some pretty interesting research here too. But as of April 2018, when they released some of this research, there are, out of the 21 million Bitcoin that will ever exist, there's only 4 million that are not unmined. And they believe that about 2.3 million of those Bitcoin are lost, or inaccessible to probably initial people that got into Bitcoin very early on, when it was not considered to be potentially valuable or really have kind of any long-term impact. About 2.3 million Bitcoin at this point in time are lost, and potentially 1.5 million additional of those can be lost. One of the interesting things when you're looking at the Bitcoin money supply here in the graph, if you're watching this on YouTube, is the number of, while the transactional coins that you see, or what they consider M1 transactional coins, what people use to spend and exchange and actually transact in the Bitcoin network, well, that number is increasing. The growth rate of speculation, the speculative coins, M0, as Chainanalysis refers to it, they are increasing at, I would say, it looks like at a greater rate. So while the transactional nature of Bitcoin is getting better, there is a ton of speculation still occurring in the Bitcoin money supply, which is interesting. Especially, you could see that number really turn up pretty rapidly in the November-December timeframe of this year. Now, according to Chainanalysis research here, so there's a couple different things that they say, but this is increased at. So they say there's been an increase in Bitcoin held for speculation from 14% of the available Bitcoin in April of 2017 to 35% in April of 2018. So that basically the amount of speculative or Bitcoin held for speculative purposes, basically gambling that it's going to go up over time, that's essentially doubled, over more than doubled actually. And this suggests that a lot of initial investors have cashed out some of their holdings, and that these Bitcoin that initial investors had are now in the hands of individuals who are either speculating. Most commonly, they are speculating the price of Bitcoin, and then a good amount are actually using it for transactional purposes as well. So one of the interesting things when you're looking at this research, and kind of one of the key points I think to take away from it, is this point here. So basically what happened during the speculative mania in November-December timeframe, a lot of OG initial investors that held significant portions of Bitcoin sold a lot of that Bitcoin when that went up to $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 essentially, and put that onto the market. Previously, it was basically locked up. So the supply was a lot more constricted. Now that Bitcoin is actually offloaded to speculators, and that is essentially increased while you know that the supply of Bitcoin itself is fixed. For the most part, people in the past, or the data suggests that many people in the past were quote unquote hodling their Bitcoin. And then when they saw the rapid increase, initial investors were more apt to sell that to speculators because of the increasing prices. So Chainanalysis says new speculators are likely depressing the price of Bitcoin. The supply of Bitcoin available for trading has increased by 57% since December of 2017. For prices to recover, either the speculators will need to reduce the supply by hodling, or demand will need to increase, driven by a new wave of speculators or new Bitcoin use cases. So that's really interesting. Number one, the fact that the available supply for trading increased by 57%. That's a pretty big number. That's pretty massive, in my opinion. I mean, 57% is pretty huge. And then the point that Chainanalysis makes, that either speculators, the people who got into Bitcoin, like let's say in December, January timeframe, or just started speculating more often, then either need to start hodling and taking that increased 57% supply essentially off the market of available for trading, or the demand for Bitcoin needs to increase due to a new wave of speculators and or new business use cases for Bitcoin. And my thought process on this is, I personally don't see a new wave of speculators necessarily coming anytime soon. That's kind of my personal opinion, is I think that you're going to need to see something crazy. If it's a retail driven mania again, which November, December, and January it was crazy. It was massive. It was a retail driven mania. But I don't necessarily know if I see that happening anytime for the rest of 2018, at least, where you're just going to get this influx of new investors. I feel like a lot of people that wanted to get into the space, had the opportunity to get into the space, got into the space, got a taste of it. A lot left. Some stayed and are continuing to hang out here and watch these videos and stay on Twitter and learn and read white papers and do everything that they can, code, build, whatever it might be. But a lot did leave. And it's going to take a little bit of time, I think, for another cycle of probably retail-driven speculation to occur at this point in time. And as far as the Bitcoin use cases, decreasing the supply or just the demand for essentially the demand for Bitcoin, I'm not exactly sure when that might happen. If something with Lightning Network, if that Lightning Network helps to drive the demand for Bitcoin somehow as a more seamless transactional cryptocurrency than it is right now, or some of the other things, that'll definitely be worth keeping an eye on and taking a look at. But I think for right now, according to what Chainanalysis says, the price of Bitcoin might stay depressed in the current state for quite some time, until people start quote unquote hodling and or the demand goes up quite a bit. Now, outside of that, and again, I will post a link to that. I'll post a link to that Chainanalysis research in the description. I think it's really, really solid stuff. So I'd highly recommend you checking it out. Read the entire article through and through and go from there. Now, this is something that I think is kind of funny and also unfortunate, but I am, as many of you know, I am not always the biggest Ripple fan, or at least XRP fan. I shouldn't say Ripple. I think Ripple's company as a whole is quite legitimate, but I'm not always the biggest XRP fan on the planet. But another investor now is running a class action lawsuit against XRP, saying XRP is a security, and that the company Ripple basically tricked investors into buying it and did all this marketing behind it and tricked investors into buying it, and drove up the price, and then they got left holding the bags, blah, 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 blah. I do think a couple different things. I'm not a big fan of seeing these class action lawsuits all the time against all these different cryptocurrency projects. Nobody's suing anyone when the price goes up 10x, but as soon as the price drops, people, I think, hesitate, or I think people just don't hold themselves accountable for making their own personal decisions for something like XRP or something like that. If it's a blatant fraud, blatant scam, if it's BitConnect, yeah, then sue away, go for it. But for something like an XRP or suing whoever in the crypto landscape, I don't love seeing this very often. So as I went through the lawsuit as a whole and just checked out a lot of this stuff, one thing I thought was kind of funny is I just Googled the person's name who's kind of filing on behalf of a number of other people for the class action lawsuit. And a quick Google search just shows you that that person also ended up suing Blue Buffalo Pet Products recently in a class action lawsuit in the past year. So I don't know if that's, I don't necessarily know what that might mean. Not going to say anything else there, but yeah, I think it's unfortunate when you see a lot of these class action lawsuits now. I just kind of, it doesn't, everybody's about decentralization, this, decentralization, that, and then the second somebody loses 10% of their money, then they're hiring law firms and doing all this type of stuff. And I think it's just not the best move for the industry as a whole, and I don't love to necessarily see it. Although I'm sure the claim, in this case, I think the claim does have probably some merit. Who knows? We'll have to see in the long run. Now, outside of that, guys, one thing I did want to mention too. So if you don't use Brave browser yet, I would definitely check it out and give it a shot. So they're doing right now $500,000 BAT giveaway per month for browser users to help kind of accelerate the ecosystem a little bit. So check out the link below in the description for Brave browser. I'll put it in a pinned comment as well. But if you're not using it yet, it's actually, so I've been using it quite a bit. And I really do like it, especially for a lot of these like crypto websites where there is a ton of, there's like a ton of just scammy pop-ups and ads and things like that. So it helps to block a lot of that crap out. It's a referral link of mine, helps me get compensated as well. So I would really appreciate it if you haven't checked it out. Give it a shot, download Brave, try it out on desktop, try it out on iPhone or Android, whatever it might be. And then you can even go to the preferences here. And if you want, you can contribute to a monthly bit of basic attention token to myself, to your favorite websites, to your favorite other YouTubers, whoever it might be. But as far as companies that are actually delivering pretty cool stuff when it comes to cryptocurrency, I think Brave is doing a solid job off the bat. There's always room for improvement, but Brave is pretty interesting there. Outside of that, guys, I hope you have a fantastic day, night, wherever you might be watching in from. Hopefully the market turns around a little bit for you, for everybody else. But until then, hit that like button, hit that thumbs up button. Really do appreciate you taking the time to watch. Have a good one, everybody. Peace.